Welcome to Uncanny X-Minutes, where we bring you the comics behind the movies. I'm producer James.
And I'm Stasia.
And we're here to talk about X-Men The Last Stand, minutes 60 through 70.
Yes, hour in. Let's go.
We hit the hour mark. And this is a shorter movie, too, so that means we're in the back half.
Honestly, yeah, it's kind of surprising how quickly we're flying through this movie a little bit, to be honest.
So what happens in these minutes?
All right. Iceman and Pyro face off, ice and fire. That's my 2 cents. The military gears up with plastic. Wolverine fights Spyke in the woods, and Multiple Man fools the soldiers. Shout out to Multiple Man.
Right? I almost waited this long, but I couldn't help myself after he appeared.
Yeah, no, same.
And I was like, oh no, we need to talk about him so much now. Anyway. Yeah, no, we're getting to the real action of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like right after this, we're going to start actually getting into big battles and what have you. So this movie really highlights the San Francisco of it all.
Yes.
The big San Francisco setting.
Which is really interesting because, like, I was not a reader of the San Francisco era. I am now because of this podcast. And
because you kind of have to at this point.
Kind of have to. But it was lost on me when this movie came out.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I did not really connect with that at all.
Well, I don't think it was out at this point.
Well, oh, it wasn't. So San Francisco came after.
Yeah, so this movie was 2006. The San Francisco years are like 2008.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's close
somewhere
enough.
around there,
yeah,
2009
so it's a little
maybe.
blurry for me. Okay, see, I still don't know when the dates are.
Because why should you?
I don't.
Yeah. So this was. I'm curious if this affected the comics. They're like, oh, that's a good, because San Francisco at the time, early 2000s, known very much as like a gay friendly city, and I'm wondering if that's why they were doing it,
to really underscore and emphasize the kind of some of the allegories they use sometimes,
right?
You know? So yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
So I was like, because I've read some of the a good chunk of stuff that happens in Utopia, which I will get to in a bit. What I was curious about at first was, when did the San Francisco start? What happened before Utopia? And it basically is right on the heels of Messiah Complex.
Okay.
I forgot that the end of Messiah Complex has Bishop shooting Professor X in the head. And I was like, wait a minute, because he didn't die. That's the thing. But they all think he dies. And I was like, wait, what? I was looking up his deaths and this was not listed.
Right. I just did this.
I just reread this book too. So like it hits hard, but I completely forgot because it has no consequence.
Sure.
Anyway, Cyclops makes a decision. We're done being X-Men.
Okay.
The X-Men are just done. We're not doing the school anymore. School's blown up. We don't care. We're all dust in the wind. And then immediately goes, hey, let's do San Francisco.
Really?
Yeah, like almost immediately.
Just because like a shift in writers, perhaps?
I'm guessing.
Yeah, it must be.
Because like, what do you do with that? There's some stories about different mutants not being in the X-Men and what they would do. It amounts to not much.
Okay.
Basically, there is one story where at the end of the story arc, Angel saves the mayor of San Francisco from a hippie mind control that covered the whole city, and it was Lady Mastermind.
Okay, sure.
So they decide to HQ in San Francisco.
Okay.
In some old military bases right outside the city, and dub it Grey Malkin Enterprises.
We have talked about this. So
you've talked about this a little bit. That also doesn't last long.
Yeah.
They created it and they said, okay, this is a safe haven for mutants. It's not a school. It's more of like an embassy. Like, all are welcome, because this is also depowered time. So even if you are a depowered mutant or the family of a depowered mutant or whatever, you are welcome. Simon Trask, the brother of Bolivar Trask, the creator of the Sentinels.
There's always more family for these people.
There's always more Trasks. He is leading a group called Humanity Now.
I do remember them.
Who leaked the footage of Cooperstown, Alaska. So the massacre that kicked off Messiah Complex, which is where Hope was born and whatever. Basically, the idea is they're like, see what happens when a mutant is born. A whole town got demolished, massacred, because one mutant was born.
Wasn't that because of the purifiers, though?
Yes, of course. Okay. But that's not what the news sees. The news sees just a destroyed town.
I understand now. Okay, so it was a spin zone situation.
Exactly.
I see.
So they said, we want to create Proposition X. a mandate that would require all mutants to subject to birth control procedures, stating that the birth of a new mutant child will cause disaster.
Oh, whoa. So they just did a whole eugenics storyline. Very interesting. Interesting choices.
Right?
I love X-Men for like weird and cool and very edgy decisions like this. This is why X-Men rules. Anyway, go on.
So obviously, riots break out.
Obviously.
Now, here's a fun fact. This happened during Dark Reign.
Oh, that's Osborn, right?
So this is... So I know, this is like I'm going on a big old dive. I'm so sorry. So, Dark Reign is a Marvel event that only minorly affected the X-Men, and this is kind of the only way it does. So, following the events of Secret Invasion, for reasons I'm not going to get into, Norman Osborn is now the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's not S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, it's Hammer. H.A.MMER. You get the thing.
Yes.
Not even going to look up what that means. Doesn't matter.
It's Hammer.
It's ham-fisted anyway. He declares martial law on San Francisco and brings in his Dark Avengers.
Right.
So the Dark Avengers are all villains posing as Avengers.
Right. 'Cause it's instead of Hawkeye, it's Bullseye.
It's Sentry, Ares, Ms. Marvel, but it's not, but like the Carol Danvers one.
Okay.
But it's being played by Moonstone.
Okay.
Black Suit Spider-Man, which was actually just Venom, but it wasn't Eddie Brock. It was Matt Gargan, the Scorpion.
Okay, keep going. I'm not even.
We're not going to get into it. Wolverine, but it was Daken.
Oh, it's Doc. Oh,
yeah. So it's Wolverine's actual son,
right?
And then Norman Osborn as the Iron Patriot.
That tracks.
Which is an Iron Man suit painted like Captain America.
Got it. Only weird thing about that is Sentry. I am kind of surprised by that.
Sentry at this point is a little. I mean, he is mentally disturbed.
Yes.
So like he kind of goes back and forth.
He is
sort of reluctant.
Yeah.
A little bit. They kind of just have him as the nuclear option.
Sure.
They don't pull him out unless they need to.
Right, because if he's doing bad thing, a good thing will happen. That's just kind of how his vibe is. I don't know a ton about Sentry, enough to know to be a little bit surprised by his inclusion in that list. But that makes sense. I mean, just compared to like Bullseye is just villain. Like just a villainous person.
So the Dark Avengers come to San Francisco, and then Norman Osborn also creates the Dark X-Men.
Okay. Who's on the Dark X-Men, please?
Well, Professor X.
Who is?
Mystique.
Of course.
So Professor X, at this point, like I said, got shot in the head. He's in like a holding cell, and he's not quite at full power because he got shot in the head. Mystique is posing as him for basically PR reasons.
That makes sense, yeah.
Okay. Emma Frost comes over.
That also tracks.
But not really though, like because Emma Frost. This is like post New X-Men.
So she would be with Cyclops.
She's literally with Cyclops right now.
Got it.
But it's a double play for later on. She's basically like, oh, I got approached to do this. I'm gonna do this to help us by being behind it. It's a double cross.
Gotcha.
Cyclops knows and nobody else does.
Okay.
Because of course that's how it would run.
Because of course then you would have drama later by someone who isn't Cyclops to find out about it.
And her only pick for the team, Namor.
Interesting.
So Namor's in on it too.
Okay.
So at the end of the whole thing, those two come out scot-free.
Got it.
Because they're like, we knew the whole time.
Double cross.
Beast, actually Dark Beast.
Dark Beast, okay, that
Dark
makes
Beast
sense.
is in the story. He's not really on the team for much, but at the end of it, they're like, look at the Dark X-Men, and it's Beast. But he looks like, not Feline Beast, like the one right before it, like Avengers. Yeah, Beast. Pre-2000 Beast. Cloak and Dagger are both on the team.
What's up with that?
They're also reluctant.
Okay, that tracks. Okay.
Wolverine, still Daken. Daken's just on the team.
Oh, he's just on
both.
He's
on both teams because he's Wolverine.
Because
Wolverine's on both teams.
That's actually very funny. I'm going to be honest about that. That's actually really funny.
Some of the people in the Dark Avengers are like, what the heck, man? How is he on both teams? Because he's Wolverine. Mimic is on the team.
Okay.
Right? So Mimic has the powers of all 5 of the original mutants at a lower power level.
Right.
And can also mimic any powers nearby.
Interesting.
And then Weapon Omega from Alpha Flight.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right. Interesting.
Long story short, they all fight, and it all ends with Cyclops getting the X Club, which is a team of scientists that I'm not going to go into who all they are, bringing Asteroid M from the bottom of the ocean.
Got it. Yes.
And then they live on it for a while.
Yes, I remember this.
As Utopia,
Right.
which is still the same thing they were doing at Grey Malkin in Industries. And what did I call it?
But they're outside of
Grey Malkin Enterprises.
But that means that makes sense. They make Utopia in international waters, so they're not under Norman Osborn. That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
So they live on that for a while. It's sort of, if you read just Krakoan era, it's like what Krakoan era, it's like proto-Krakoa.
I did read some of this because I liked Krakoa so much, and so many people were like, it's just Utopia.
Right. And there's a couple of big events that happen while they're on Utopia, because there's a storyline called the Utopia that ends with this coming up. Necrotia happens while they're there.
Right.
Second Coming happens while they're there. Schism happens while they're there.
Love Schism.
And Avengers versus X-Men happens while they're there.
Yes. So those are the two that I've read.
Yeah.
Schism and AVX when they're on Utopia.
So they're on Utopia for all of those. And I think basically the end of AVX is them leaving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Because Cyclops kills Professor X and then goes on the run. And Wolverine starts the school back up. Basically, I fast forward through a bunch of that.
Yeah, but
that's when
top level.
They're in San Francisco for quite some time. It is an era of X-Men, just kind of like Krakoa is an era of X-Men.
It seems like really long,
because it's just a backdrop. After a while,
because it doesn't actually really matter where they are. Kind of like the school, right? It's like they're the school, they're elsewhere a lot of the time.
Right, exactly.
It's almost like the Australian era, but it seems even maybe a little touch longer.
Could be.
Yeah, I'm not positive. I'd have to check on that.
We have to check the timelines.
Yeah.
Which we're not going to do right now.
Nope, not important.
It's trivia is more what it is, and that's interesting trivia. But yeah, so San Francisco at the time of the movie made, not really as important. Shortly after and for a while. I think it's like 4 years.
That is super interesting. I wonder if they thought they were going to make more movies in San Francisco with the original X-Men movies, because I don't know, because it's interesting to set it in San Francisco for such a long time and have I'm sure part of those story beats were at least being drawn up conceptually, right? But who knows? A writer will have to let us know. If you were a writer on the X-Men, please let me know. Anyway.
So there's that.
I love that. I brought something completely different today.
Completely different.
I realized that my favorite part about this podcast is just to do deep dives on characters.
Yeah.
And so once again, here I am doing a deep dive on a character.
You mean
this
Spyke?
is a stretch.
You mean Spyke? You mean how Wolverine fights Spyke in the woods?
Okay, kind of. So,
because Spyke, he's a character.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about that. So
I'll tell you why. So when we were pitching, what is this episode going to be about? I definitely put Spyke / Marrow.
Correct. Because
when I was watching the movie, I was like, yeah, I think that's supposed to be Spyke. And when I say Spyke, I mean from X-Men Evolution, the cartoon show.
Yes.
Which is Storm's nephew.
Yes.
And radical, I guess. At the time, he's a cool dude.
He's a cool kid who's on a skateboard.
Right, he's on a skateboard. It helps with his powers for reasons, but he grows bone from his body.
His arms in the cartoon, particularly.
So I was like, okay, well, maybe that's who it's supposed to be. And then I was reading Ecstatics for that previous episode, and another Spyke showed up with similar. It wasn't bone, though, for the one in Ecstatics.
It's like spikes coming.
There's still spikes. It's weird. But when I looked, that's who this guy is supposed to be. They both had, according to... when you start going into fan wiki websites and stuff, they're all like, yeah, it's the same character.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It isn't.
It isn't. Because here's the thing. Spyke in the comics, who's Darian Elliott, his powers are to mold and extend his flesh into razor sharp points from any of his body.
Right.
What they are doing in the movie are bones. And that
absolutely
is a different character entirely.
And the reason why we are not going into a Spyke deep dive is, one, he's not that interesting.
And not that
And I don't care.
Popular.
I don't care. But who is interesting
Marrow.
Who basically is the same type of character, but has been around in the X-Men way longer and was way more interesting.
I saw a person with bones coming out of their body, and my first thought is, that's Marrow.
That's supposed to be Marrow.
And then
I
it
thought
was
the
like,
same thing.
It's a dude? What's going on? And then I'm like, oh, is this Spyke? I guess. Lame. So we're not here to talk about Spyke.
Hey, Spyke in the X-Men Evolution, though, I want to say, is with a Y.
Oh, okay.
And the one from the X-Force X-Statix is the Spyke.
There you go.
And this is neither one. Let's talk about Marrow
If
instead.
you like the concept of Spyke as a guy with the things out of his arms, you should just go watch X-Men Evolution.
Yeah.
But we're not here to recap that.
Nope.
We're here to recap the comic book. So we're going to talk about Marrow.
Yeah.
Marrow is a Morlock.
Sure is.
She is one of, she is a child at the beginning of the
when
comics.
Introduced, yeah.
When introduced. Technically, she is introduced in the Cable miniseries, where it's not, I don't know if it's exactly a miniseries because there's more than 20 issues. So at that point, I just think it's a run. But
right.
It's the Cable standalone comic. And she's a child. And they're kind of introducing this backstory of the mutant massacre and what happened and the fallout from it. So she's a child. The mutant massacre is happening. Gambit saves her during those, during the Cable run. They kind of show you other viewpoints.
Yeah, because you were saying before how Gambit is behind the massacre part of the mutant massacre, but not when it was originally written, sort of an after, they keep coming back to that well, right?
Yeah, so he was, and he didn't know that what they were going to do. He was just paid by Sinister to set up a team. And so he does, and then finds out later. Okay. And so then this kind of big secret is kind of played with. It's with him and Rogue, and in the Cable miniseries, they do this kind of flashback into the mutant massacre, and they're going, and you see a scene of Gambit saving the one child because he realizes what's happening. He's trying to also save people, and the person he's saving is Marrow. Marrow's life is so interesting because basically she's never, as when she was a child, she never left the tunnels. She presumably was born there, and up until the mutant massacre occurs, she had never left. And so she was just a really young mutant that's always been in the tunnels. We'll get to this, but in X-Men Unlimited number 22, she says the first time she saw a human was when a romance novel was floating down the sewers, and she saw the cover. So that's what I mean. Okay. So some other things about warlocks I didn't talk about last time when we talked about it in the last episode with Callisto, but something that is kind of relevant to Marrow is that there is a plot thread that they were created by Dark Beast.
Right. You may have...
Did I touch on that?
You may have touched on that, but it's still important.
Marrow is the one who gets told this by Dark Beast.
Okay.
So that's where this is introduced. And the reason that she is kind of... I'm like, oh, Dark Beast, but evil. Yes, because Marrow, after the mutant massacre, she ends up getting teleported to a different plane of existence by Mikhail Rasputin. And it's not just her. Basically, all the Morlocks do. This is pretty much right after the mutant massacre.
Yeah.
And he floods the tunnels, and people think that he went to kill them all, but actually what he's doing is sending them to a different plane of existence. And so she gets swept there. She's raised by Callisto at this different plane called the Hill.
Okay.
And when her powers fully manifest, so puberty, the Mikhail's society takes those mutants, kicks them off the hill into the Outlands, and they have to fight and kill their way back up to the hill. And only those who kill everybody in their way and make it back up to the top can then live at the top of the hill with the blue skies and everything, whatever, and they become part of Gene Nation.
Okay.
Who is basically Mikhail's terrorist, private supercell terrorist of whatever.
Terrifying.
It's so her life is pretty brutal.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. She was a regular Morlock. She saw the fight between Storm and Callisto. She lived that. Everything that prefaced everything that we talked about with the Morlocks.
Anytime we talk about Morlocks.
She was there.
Yeah.
The other thing about the Hill is you might be wondering, wait a second, if she's a child during the era of the Callisto fight, why is she like 19 when she shows up in these issues?
Yeah.
Well, that's because the Hill's plane of dimension has an accelerated time. So
a real Ilyana Rasputin.
Let
nonsense.
me tell you, there is a lot of that in here, okay?
Yeah.
Including on Colossus
That's
thing.
kind of what that you could, if you were to generalize the story, that's also what happened to Magic.
Right. And so she comes
limbo
she
instead.
comes back with Gene Nation to enact revenge upon humans and everybody else that didn't, like all the Morlocks that like betrayed their kind and did not go through the portal to the Hill. When she comes back, she realizes then that it's been a decade for her, but it's been a couple months for everybody on Earth, basically.
Yeah, because her going as a child happens in like real time. September 94 is when that the date on that one is. It's July 95. She comes back as like Marrow.
Right.
So it's been a year in real time.
Yes. But that's
12 issues. That's not even a lot of,
no.
That's not much.
Marrow's super interesting because she is this like very angry, very violent, and also like brainwashed. I mean, honestly, like that's her character, and a lot of her anger is directed at Storm for being the leader of the Morlocks, but not
saving
leading them out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. She's also mad because she wanted her Storm to not just invite them to Xavier's school, because that's just not really good enough for Marrow. Marrow wanted was her to basically overthrow the humans, and like that was never going to happen. No. That's like kind of the cornerstone of like Marrow and like her anger and like her feeling of like being like cast aside and betrayed by her society, right? Storm, while she's fighting Marrow and G Nation, when she comes back and she's literally killing people. Like they're like the first introduction with her in the comics in X-Men Prime is her murdering a homeless guy in the tunnels because she's like, no humans can be down here in the tunnels of New York. It's pretty brutal. It's horrifying. She's like holding his like dead body by his hair. It's like
yikes,
really violent.
Yeah.
That storyline ends with Storm in a room where Marrow has all of these captured people like from a train station where she's like implanted like bombs, and the timer is Marrow's own heartbeats.
Jeez.
And so she's saying, Storm, I know you don't kill people because I watched you not kill Callisto and you're weak and whatever. So my heartbeat is tied to the bomb. And so you're not going to kill me. And all these people are going to die because of your inaction. So she's using
a real trolley problem.
Weaponizing. Yeah. Fun fact, Storm was like immediately like, well, guess there's only one solution. Puts her hand into Marrow's heart and pulls it out.
Okay.
She got better. She has more than one heart, but she is left for dead.
She's a Time Lord is what you're saying?
Kind of a little.
Or is it just regenerative abilities? Like
they kind of chalked it up. It's very throwaway. It's not like well explained.
Good.
But
sounds about right.
They kind of imply that like, and it kind of makes sense. Marrow has all these bones that grow out of her body. She's able to pull them out to like turn them into like weapons.
Like in this movie, snap them off and throw
them all the time.
Yeah.
She literally, there's like one issue where she like makes weapons for everybody, just like continually pulls them out for people.
Awesome.
Presumably they're saying that like her body also grows other organs too. Like she's growing a lot of things. So I'm like, I can buy that. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll let that go.
High calorie diet for sure.
For sure.
Because I remember reading the only real interaction I've had with Marrow is when she joined the X-Men proper.
Yes.
And I think that's during Operation Zero Tolerance is probably what I was reading.
That makes sense.
There was the only thing that sticks in my mind is there was a point where Colossus wanted to take her out into the real world and just be a real person and got her to like bring, because if you look at her, she usually has like almost like horns coming out of her forehead. And she was able to reduce them down into her head. And then, you know, she obviously freaks out when they're out. And then everyone's like, it's a mutant.
So that is actually a part of the bigger story about Marrow.
Yeah.
So do you remember the romance novel I was talking about?
Yeah.
So that is in X-Men Unlimited number 22. And that is when she is with the X-Men. We can just skip through that. Basically, we kind of talked about it last time with Callisto. Mm-hmm. Basically, Callisto sends her to be with the X-Men. She makes up, this is after G Nation. She's kind of recovered a little bit.
Sure.
Cable helps. Long story short.
Let's be honest, with how long these books run, a lot of villains just end up being on the X-Men.
Yeah, and also
and then they sometimes go back to being villains. It's just how it works. You just kind of roll with it when you're reading it.
Especially when they're kids.
Yeah.
Because Marrow is a kid.
Yeah.
Like, even at the end, even when she comes back, like, fast forward, years or whatever, she's still, like, really young X-Men.
Sure.
She would be a new mutant, really. She is a contemporary of Cannonball. So if we kind of want to put that in context. She is obsessed with beauty. She like literally throws dead rats at Kitty Pryde at the beginning of number 22. And she has this whole monologue about how beautiful she is, chestnut hair, lips gently parted, whatever. And she's like, and she deserves this. And it's like throwing rats at her. It's this bitterness that Marrow feels like she's ugly. And like, she also says this to Kitty Pryde in that issue where like, you don't understand, like you and Xavier and all of them, yours are all beautiful. And you don't even really know what it's like for people like me. And it gets really, it's a really interesting, complex thing with her. And just like we talked about Callisto last time, her, you know how she's able to retract her horns and stuff like that. There's actually multiple times where she is beautified and then unbeautified through
just like Callisto.
Just like Callisto. So once she gets teleported with Gambit to like a Skrull training camp and she's like in critical condition and she goes into a Skrull healing thing and then comes out beautiful with just like the horns, but like curled and almost like bangs. Like it's like silly, honestly. And then she like, and this is when Colossus, I think, is trying to like talk to her about inner beauty. And then they're also trying to teach her how to retract, to like put everything under control. There is an unexplained period of time where she gets it. All of a sudden, that doesn't work anymore, but they don't explain it.
This is another example, I think, of a lot of artists not knowing how to draw unattractive women that are just not
100%.
So it's like, because there's a lot of times you're like, no, she's still attractive. She just has like horns. That's it.
In all fairness, Kitty Pryde does say that in the other issue, but like it was also right before they're doing this back and forth with like her beauty. So she gets healed by a Skrull camp. There's another time where she works for Weapon X as an assassin in return for them to make her beautiful, and so then she has like Wolverine claws for a while.
Well, I mean,
which makes sense. It's just you know, she's under control.
She has control. She can make Wolverine claws.
M-Day, when she's depowered, she loses her powers, but her bones don't go away.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty bad for her. There's just a lot of that.
I mean, I guess that makes sense because she's growing them. It's not like they just are there.
Right.
You know?
There is a lot here. But I think at the end of the day, she eventually does turn and become a good guy, kind of like, if you really want to be like quote unquote, because of her time with the X-Men, because of like Storm, and also because of Cannonball. She falls in love with him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, who wouldn't? He's true.
He's
a sweet
just
guy.
A good old boy, man. Sam Guthrie, the ladies everywhere. He goes home when his mom is sick. And this is when he leaves the X-Men and leaves her on, and she's like heartbroken, and it's just like a very interesting time for her. She is also been the recipient of some of the most horrendous, like, she wants to get her powers back, and she is pregnant and is manipulated by this bad guy who gave her powers back, but then her baby dies because of it, and like they use the stem cells. It's a very complicated. I really don't want to get too much into it. I don't love it, but it is like there's a whole period of time where she doesn't have her memories. Her personality is totally shifted, and she like eventually that Psylocke somehow unlocks her memories, and it's this like her horrifying realization. She kind of hates herself for a little bit because she feels like she chose to do that, and then eventually it's revealed that the guy lied to her and she didn't. Her bone control is really different at that point too. They haven't really done much with her since.
Yeah, I don't remember too much of her lately.
Yeah, she isn't really in Krakoa.
No, she's probably, I think with a lot of Krakoa characters, sometimes they're just in the background.
Yeah, she might be in a panel somewhere.
Yeah.
But honestly, she hasn't really been a main fixture of like any of the, and then to be honest, a lot of the new X-Men, like those younger kids like Beak and Glob and her and even like Kid Omega and the Cuckoos are probably the only exception because they were in X-Force. But like Edie, who was like huge before that, all of the rest of them are just like kind of lost and not in this new era.
They had the opportunity to bring back a bunch of new characters.
Right.
And so when you do that, you can't, unless somebody's like, ooh, they'll be out. I'll write a new book with them in it.
Right.
I did look up on this is just straight from the Wikipedia. Basically, it looks like she was in a group shot somewhere, and that's about all it says.
Right. Yeah. That's the kind of level, which is like fine. It's like, it's a little Easter egg, but ultimately,
for a while, Blob was just the bartender.
Right.
I think he got a little more here and there, but for the most part, he's just the bartender. That's it.
Odd, right?
And that's all he needs to be,
Yeah. So Marrow is actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
I would say that her earlier stuff, like we're talking Uncanny X-Men number 325. We're talking about Uncanny X-Men 346, right? She has some like interesting issues with Spider-Man. She had some overlap. Like she's in Peter Parker Spider-Man number 4. He was in Uncanny 346, like in these kind of like standalone issues. And there's like one more, I think, I can't remember what the issue number is, that she is with him. I would say like go read some of that older stuff that I was talking about, those kind of early Uncanny, the Cable standalone where you get the background on the Mutant Massacre. And then I would say X-Men Unlimited number 22 is a standalone issue just about the personality of Marrow. So if you're just like interested in getting like what this character is like and what they would be like, that's just read that one issue, and that you'll see her start off throwing dead rats at Kitty Pryde.
That's all you got to know about her. Dead rats at Kitty Pryde, apparently.
I mean, I really feel like that's pretty encompassing of her character.
Okay.
So I will point that out.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. I'm producer James.
I'm Stasia.
And we'll see you for the next 10.